Why do some agents seem to create consistent income, time freedom, while others are stuck on the hamster wheel? It's not luck, it's the three foundations that every scalable business is built on. Stick with me because I'm going to be breaking those down for you in today's training. And I'm Steph Wilkinson, and this channel is all about helping real estate agents build businesses that are predictable, scalable, sustainable, and give you your time back. And after 25 years in this industry and coaching hundreds of agents, I know exactly what keeps most agents stuck. And I'm here to help you fix it. So if you're ready to stop hustling harder and start building smarter, you're in the right place.
All right, everybody, right into our presentation on how agents are building scalable, predictable, and supported businesses. And the key is without hustling harder or guessing what you're supposed to do next. What are you going to learn today? Why most agents feel stuck, even the experienced ones. The three foundations for building a business that actually works for you. How to grow without burning out. And don't we all want to know how to do that? And how top agents are creating consistent income without chasing leads and chasing deals. Why are most agents staying stuck? Well, as you know, you're wearing every hat. You're the transaction coordinator, you're the listing agent, you're the buyer agent, you're the showing assistant, you're your bookkeeper. You are wearing every single hat. And when you're often needing to work inside your business and work on your business, it can feel really overwhelming. And it's also hard when you don't have predictable income. You're trying to figure out, how do I get out of this rut? And it's next to impossible when you can't predict where your cash flow is going to be. That also keeps agents stuck. And if you don't have a roadmap, you don't have support, and you really don't know what your path forward should be. Deep breath. Where do you begin? Where do I even start on all of this? And my biggest piece of advice after coaching agents for over a decade, you have to stop running a job and start building a business. And we know when you go and you get your real estate license and you're super excited because you love people, you love houses, you really want to help people find their dream home. Very few real estate agents come into this industry having a real solid foundation in businesses and business building. So that is really the first key component into this, is you've got to make a shift. You have to start thinking like a CEO and not a solo agent. And anyone who's followed my videos, you know that this is everything this channel is about, is providing you with tips and techniques on how to go from being that solo agent into creating that actual scalable business and being the CEO of an actual real estate business. Foundation number one is creating scalable systems, because that actually gives you more time and it's less chaos. And you can really go from chaos to clarity when you have those systems in place. And what you actually systemize, you can scale. Now, granted, there are a million layers to all of this, and I don't want you to have your eyes glaze over and turn off the video because you're like, I don't need to hear about this. I don't need another system. I don't have time for that. How am I possibly going to implement all of this into my day-to-day life? That's where that mind shift needs to move from an agent into a CEO. You need to carve out the time in order to focus on the important foundations for your business. And the systems aren't difficult, they just need to be strategic. Your must-have systems, we just kind of talked about this: time management and energy management. And this goes well beyond time blocking. This goes into, your natural energy rhythms should align with the activities that you want during that time frame. So if you are not a morning person, forcing yourself to do prospecting in the morning, you'll probably never get to it because you just don't feel like it, or you don't have the energy to really be on. So you need to really start thinking about, what are my energy cycles? And when do I have the time to focus on high revenue generating activities And then when do I have the time and the energy to focus on, building these business foundations? You have to have systems for your lead generation. More importantly, your lead follow-up, because most agents don't have a problem getting leads. They have a problem converting them and staying in touch with them. And both of those require a very robust and specific system. Customer fulfillment to me means more than just customer service. It's really about everything that you are doing to create raving fans from your sphere of influence and your past clients so that they always want to do business with you, even when you're not in emotional proximity with them, but you should be. And whenever the word real estate comes up, your name pops into their brain and they're going to want to provide you with referral business. Then you got to have a financial system. You've got to be looking at where your expenses are. What is your profit and loss statement? What are you looking at for basically tax preparation and income preservation? And I always tell my agents, I really don't care how much money you make. I care about how much money you keep. So within all of this, you have to have a database. We've talked about lead gen and lead follow-up. You also need to have a very standard system on how you handle your buyers, everything from first conversation to onboarding, on how they should go to open houses. How do you handle, offers? How do you help them once an offer is accepted, getting ready for them to actually move in? Same thing with your sellers. What's your listing appointment? What's your first conversations? How are you handling everything, getting the property prepared to go on the market? Everything needs to be systemized, because if you want to scale and you want to have a bigger business and you want to have leverage by bringing people onto your team, whether it's virtual or whether they're right next to you, you need to have that system that you can plug them into, because these people are now going to be representing you and your brand and the business that you've built. And you really want to make sure that you can kind of plug and play, because as you grow, and there's so many things to think about when you're there, and I'm here to help you on that. You really want to manage the system and manage the people to the system, not the other way around. And we'll talk a lot more about that when you're really ready to go on that growth path. We talked about the financial system, time management, and time blocking. Foundation number 2, predictable income comes from structure, not hustle. And predictable income is built, it's not hoped for. So let me repeat that. Predictable income is built. It is not hoped for. And how do you go about doing this? Once again, when we get our license, we're taught lots of really interesting things that, never actually have any impact on our real estate life. However, no one really teaches us that what are the fundamentals of a real estate business. Everybody's going to be familiar with this. We kind of jokingly call it the cycle of suck, where you identify a client, you're busting your butt to do everything you possibly can to make that a great and successful experience for them. The property closes, and then you pick up your head and you're like, oh crap, I'm unemployed again, because I have put all my time, effort, and energy into this transaction that I haven't done any lead generation. I haven't done any lead follow-up. I haven't really done anything to really grow my business. And I think my dog just busted into the room. And what we really need to do is kind of change that. And how do we go about changing that? It's really, once again, thinking like a CEO, and every agent wants to, be in a position that you're growing predictable business and predictable income. And how do you grow that year over year? And really the key to growing your business year over year and growing your income really ultimately comes down to growing the size of your database. However, that only works if you have your database, pun intended, truly dialed in. And it's not until you know the percentage conversion rate of the number of people that you have in your database to the number of anticipated transactions you can have out of those people in the database that you can then understand what your future goals are, what your gap analysis is. And then that leads to, how many more people do I need to add into my database and nurture and work through that sales funnel in order to generate the income that I'm looking for year after year after year. And all of that comes from structure. So really, let's kind of break this down, go a little step backwards to go a number of steps forward. You have your job, which is, everything that you need to be actively focused on every single day. And then you've got your business. And that's really what happens while you're sleeping. And how do you do all of this while you're wearing all of these hats? How do you do this effectively? Well, anyone who follows my videos or has done training with me before knows I'm a complete and total nerd on this stuff. We're going to start talking about, one predictable principle. I also have a bunch of productivity hacks and all of that other stuff to help you be more efficient, but really going to focus right now on Pareto's principle. It was named after an Italian economist who realized that 80% of Italy's income was coming from 20% of the population. We know this as the 80-20 rule. I mean, it's alive and well in everything. I probably wear 20% of the clothes that are in my closet. And the Pareto principle absolutely is in effect when it comes to what you need to be focused on in your real estate business and activities. So this is a question that I usually pose for every agent that I work with, whether they're brand new to the business or whether they've been in it for, decades and doing, 25, 30 transactions a year. What are the 5 points of your real estate of a real estate agent's job? And I can tell you that most can't answer all 5. And all 5 of those are truly your 20%. So your 20%, your job description, your 5 points are lead generation. Because if you're not generating more people into your sales funnel, it's going to be really hard to have a business and grow a business. Your lead follow-up. What is your plan for staying in touch with people and being in emotional proximity with them? So when they're ready to do business or they know someone that is, you're the first person that they reach out to. You've got to go on appointments. You've got to negotiate and close deals. And then I'm expanding this category beyond just script and objection handling, which is critical. It's also really skill development. So that might be, how do I do a better job at AI so that I can be more efficient in my business? Could be, how do I do a better job at YouTube videos and my social media so that I can have that generating business for me in the background? Once again, now we're shifting over to the business side of things, which, as we talked about before, are the things that happen while you're sleeping. SEO, Facebook ads, the traffic that you get to your YouTube channel, your social media posts, any webinars or sales funnels and lead magnets that you have. All of those things are your business, and they also help. Once again, we're all about moving those people through that sales funnel of the know you, like you, trust you. And it's not until they trust you that they'll do business with you. So that business side is going to be really what is happening behind the scenes to help move people through your sales funnel. And you got to have a plan. When we really talk about structure, if you don't have a business plan and you're not tracking it, it's like flying a plane from LA to Boston, but you don't have the right coordinates and you end up in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Like, you really need to understand and have that business plan. And let's talk a little bit about, most of the time when I sit down with agents and I ask them, what do you want for your income goals? It's like, 100,000, 200,000. But there's really no strategy or connection back to that. And I kind of call this the CEO cash flow, where we really want to look at it as, what's your survival number? And now you want to triple that. So now you're working towards having that equivalent in savings and that equivalent in order to invest. And this is where you're going to basically be able to create that cash flow that is going to allow you to build that financial freedom that you're looking for. And I know that's kind of a coined phrase that people start rolling their eyes on, but if you do this the right way, you're going to have that opportunity. So you've got your survival number, you've got that in savings, which is really going to be, your safety net if the industry starts to shift or something just happens in your life. And then we also want to be in there where you've got that bucket for investing, and whether that's, cash flowing rental properties, whether that's Bitcoin or it's ETFs. I don't really, that's going to be up to you and kind of your financial goals. But we want to make sure that you're building into that, because that's going to be the passive income that you want to have coming into your life. So you've really got to start with that income goal. And then you have to know your numbers. And I always started off on an annual basis. We can break it down into a quarterly basis. And then you want to know monthly, weekly, and daily. What are the numbers that you need to hit basically every single day so that you have a high probability of reaching or exceeding the goal that you set for yourself in your business plan? And everything in your business should be tracked, because if it's measured, it can be improved. Tracker. So we intro into actually tracking numbers in your business. Focus on what are your key KPIs, which are key performance indicators. And that's going to be hours prospecting, contacts made, leads generated, appointments set, the appointments that you've actually gone on, contracts signed, offers, closings, commissions. All of this should be tracked. And all of my agents use a relatively straightforward, very simple tracker that actually rolls up on a monthly and annual basis, where you're actually able to see where you are against your previous business or where you are against industry standards. Here's all the conversion ratios that will be calculated on the spreadsheet that we basically use. But it also goes into your key conversion matrix. And this is basically a very conservative industry standard of the number of contacts per hour if you're dialing for dollars, to the number of contacts that will actually become leads, to the appointments that you set, to the appointments that will actually meet with you and not cancel on you, your listings taken and your listings that have sold, or your buyers that are taken and buyers that you actually have their properties actually purchased. And what is so great about tracking your numbers is you can compare that against industry standard or your previous numbers. And you're going to really know what are the areas of my business that I really need to develop my skill set on. So if you're going on a lot of listing appointments, but you're not closing the listings and getting the contract, like that's a clear indicator that you need to work on your listing presentation and your objection handling. If you're taking listings, but you're not actually selling them, that could be an indicator of really needing to spend a lot more time on pricing property and knowing the market. So when you actually are looking at all of these numbers and you're tracking them, you have the ability to improve upon all of them. And then foundation number 3 is coaching and mentoring. Every top producer has a coach or a mentor behind the scenes who are helping them. And you don't have to do it alone. You can get real-time guidance from somebody who's been there, accountability that keeps your momentum going and making sure you're on the right path. Learn what's working right now. A lot of real estate coaches out there, are still teaching what was taught 10 years ago. They're not staying up to speed on how you use artificial intelligence, as an example, in your business to be more efficient, more effective, and have better communication with people. You really want to make sure that you're working with someone who's staying on top of, all of the latest developments, not only in the business industry and also the real estate industry. And you want to replace trial and error with strategy, structure, and support. So when you look at and you build that whole framework, framework number 1 is scalable. Number 2 is predictable, and 3, that your business is supported. When you combine all 3, this is how your business becomes sustainable, consistent, and you're ready for that actual next growth step. Quick things to implement today. Just choose one system, just one of the systems, and try to automate that this week. Whether it's your lead generation, your lead follow-up, think about how can you be more strategic about that, automating that system. Time block 1 hour a day minimum for consistent lead generation, and reach out to someone for some feedback and accountability on where you are and where you're going. That's how you're going to learn how to win. And you're closer than you think. The business you want really isn't a mystery. It just takes a better plan, a few key systems. I know I've talked a lot about them, but those things can be integrated and built over time as your business grows. Those are all the systems you're going to need for a scalable business. Yet you got to start somewhere, and you got to have the right support, and you don't have to figure this out on your own. And I love this quote by James Clear, that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And once again, you don't have to do this alone. Here, QR code, you can actually just get on my Calendly if you want to book a quick call with me to talk more about, my services and how I might be able to help you. I'll also put in the description of this video, basically a link to my free business health assessment, which will really give you a lot of insight into where your business is and where your business needs to go. Also, I'll put in some links for my real estate business bootcamp, which is a 7-day video series that I email out once a day, which is really kind of a guide to some quick tips to get these systems going. And then also I have a real estate business blueprint program, which is an online self-paced course, which right now it's ever growing, but it has 11 modules, 24 courses, and it's really much more of an in-depth practical approach to building all of these systems. It also has a ton more. I've got neuro-linguistic programming in there. I've got some really great tips on communication and how you can convert people better. So all of that is going to be available in the description. And once again, if you like my content, I would really appreciate if you'd hit like on this video and hit subscribe and, put on your notifications, because I'm trying to put out a video every single day. And as you know, this whole entire channel is dedicated to helping agents go from being a solo agent into being the CEO of a real business. And I would love to be in a position to help you out.